It was used on a regular day at the Delta base at the mess hall. Both Elizabeth and Kat were sitting there talking about their recent fights about against the Tropian Empire who's been going on. They want to be helping the peace on Earth among other aliens that have been living there. But there was also something about they wanted to stop this their enemy, the Tropian Empire for good. But as they were having some just an early lunch, when suddenly the alarms going off. Apparently, it turned out it was the Tropian Empire has been sending its fighters to the Earth to attack the city and once again. Even though both Kat and Elizabeth, which was getting big sides, when can they not having one single day without being without the entire their enemy were attacking? That can't go one single day without them being attacking, planning an attack on Earth, even for a single day. The Beat Squadron Rangers have been so busy with the Tropian Empire for so much lately, but they try to maintain the morale among the team in order to save and maintain the peace. They want to stop this planet conquering empire from taking over Earth. Because if they lose to be defending Earth, they will probably be enslaved and probably even much worse. If that, the rest of the team will never want to be letting that happen. After nearly a few hours of fighting against this empire's fighters, the fight was over and the enemy was withdrawn back into space again. Both Elizabeth and, of course, Jack and the others were just getting a bit tired. They have been fighting almost non-stop without for several days without almost not breaking it. Even despite they were trying to stop the enemy from attacking, they just want to have at least one point of they could use on doing some relaxation. But despite when there aren't any attacks from the enemy, they're having constant training to make sure they're in good health and a good physical training. After all, Anubis, their commander and mentor, had been made sure that they always are up top, at they're always at top for the training, so they were not being tired of. Sometimes it can happen that the enemy will attack middle of the night, just after they had just gone to bed or something. That can always affect their personal training and even their affecting his sleep. We're trying, even though despite that, the Empire they actually tried to attack the city multiple times during one night, at least for a whole week, trying to tire out the entire B Squad Rangers. And it was seemingly close to the work. But they all realized if they just suddenly don't even get up if the enemy attacking, they will lose. So when the enemy found out that their plan by attacking at night, trying to make the Beat Squadron Rangers tired even through the day, so they won't be able to maintain the high morale, the high training, and high focus to be in order to fight and defend them, it failed. So they stopped doing that particular plan though. But after this particular fight, Elizabeth was sitting in the mess hall by herself, talking to herself about something. She had actually been for quite some time now, been very interested in her teammate, Kat. Kat has been a very interested kind of friend of hers. She's the technician, but also a close friend. But for the past few times now, for the past few weeks and almost a month, she has started to have some feelings for Kat, despite knowing that she is an alien. And not only that she is 147 years old, alien cat like alien. And even though despite that, she just didn't know if Kat would like her back in the same way, because she didn't know. After all, in her mind, Kat would probably see her just as another close friend, nothing more. So for that, she hadn't even told anyone, not even some other team members, about her feelings for Kat. But despite that, she wanted to be able to be close to Kat. After all, she had so much things in common. They like to talk about some common things. They like type of music. But despite that, that Kat is like nearly 150 years old. She still looks like in her mid 20s or early 20s. But she didn't even mind for that, because in her mind, Kat, or Catherine was also her full name, is very beautiful, and she's a very strong fighter and skilled as one is too, and even skilled technician. She often helps Elizabeth to repair some of the machinery and her sword, some of the droids and something like that, and even some equipment. They even sparring against each other from time to time, and despite that, she tries to focus on her duty as the Power Ranger, but at the same time, it's a bit difficult when can't always slip in her mind, and that makes her almost invulnerable to being focused. Because after this recent fight against the Tropian Empire, they really wanted to have try to maintain the high morale among their team. Even Anubis had suggested maybe that they try to do some sparring against each other to maintain the high morale and try to maintain their strong physical strength, and also try to maintain them so they wouldn't give up hope of defeating the Empire entirely. And even during that, Elizabeth was asked by Kat if she wanted to spar against her, some just friendly spar match. And even though that Elizabeth said, yeah, why not? So that they did. Even despite to this sparring match, Elizabeth could not even stand to stop thinking about Kat. Despite she had her in front of her, she tried to focus in the fighting, but sometimes it slipped her mind, and she lost at least a couple of times when Anubis was watching. He somehow scolded her to Elizabeth tried to focus on her enemy, which is not the cat, but is a more as a friendly type of this. Demanded her to be always be a focus, always watch when her enemy, her next move can have been, so that she can block it and attack and defense and get back it. Even though that cat tried to defeat her enemy, which Elizabeth tried to defend herself, but even despite her all this, even after Anubis left the area to see the others in other of those sparring games matches, it was a lot of things that happened. Because after the recent fight with the enemy, Kat was trying to maintain her high focus, and she tried to make the same thing for her team, and especially for Elizabeth. She cared about her. She saw her as a very good best friend. But there was something about Elizabeth that she didn't even realize, though, because every time she saw that Elizabeth was looking at her, it was like something. It was like she didn't exactly. She couldn't even put it for exactly what it was. But during a sparring match, Elizabeth tried to maintain the focus on her sparring match against Kat. But it wasn't that easy. Kat somehow managed to drop her down, kick her down on the floor, and as she was approaching to lift her up, she saw that Cat Elizabeth was a bit out of mind. She wasn't even focused. She noticed that immediately, and then she asked if what's wrong with Cat Elizabeth. She wasn't even focused at all on their sparring match. Elizabeth tried to brush that off, but even the cat insisted to know exactly what happened. If something was wrong, maybe that she can help her with something. If there was something wrong, she could even help her with what matter it was. But Cat, she told said Elizabeth, nothing is wrong. But Kat could insist that something was wrong. It was like she has a sense that she could sense that Elizabeth wasn't even honest about something. So she tried to focus again. But Elizabeth said that nothing was wrong, she just was just tired, that's all. So she decided they had trained enough and she wanted to go back to her own room. So Kat stood there when seeing Elizabeth just walking away. Elizabeth went back to her own room and just laying on the bed, she started crying because she was so close that she was able to tell Kat about her true feelings. But there was something about this. She really wanted to be able to tell. But despite this, she didn't know exactly how to tell. But as she was crying, she put the pillow over her head to try to sound out the cries that no one else could hear. So for the next couple of days, the enemy did not attack Earth at all or the city for most part. It was quiet for the first time in quite some time. So both Kat and the others were just sitting in the mess hall talking about why the enemy hasn't even attacking yet. Maybe they were just Sydney said maybe that they were just having bored of attacking Earth or they tried to figure out the better plan to be conquering the planet entirely. Which the others men said probably said the others, but there was something about that. Elizabeth she wasn't even speaking much. And in fact, she wasn't even sitting among her friends. She was actually sitting on a table by herself. The others was just curious why she wasn't sitting with them. Maybe just she's tired of all this fighting, said Jack. Even though after the others had left, except for Kat, she went over to talk to Elizabeth. She wanted to know what was going on. She was getting worried about her friend by now. Despite this, Elizabeth still didn't want to tell exactly what was wrong, or if something wasn't even wrong at all. She also tried to imply that something wasn't even wrong at all. She was just been tired because all the recent fights, and she had been thinking if the fights even had any would they resolve any of this. If they were able to, will even to be able to defeat the enemy entirely from that. But Kat sensed that something still was going on. But she agreed to let this pass because she didn't want to make Elizabeth angry at her for some stupid reason. But after the cat left, Elizabeth sighed and said to herself silently, "Why can I tell her? Why can I tell her?" repeatedly over and over. She wanted to be able to tell Cat, but she doesn't even know exactly how to be able to do it. She was just puzzled in most part. But the same evening, Elizabeth was still awake and she was getting hungry, so she went down to the mess hall to maybe find something to eat. She was expecting the mess hall to be empty, and it was around midnight. But when she went down there, it was far from empty. There was someone else there, and she saw it was Cat. It turned out Cat can even either sleep, so she asked Cat if she could just sit down with her, and she did. At first, they didn't speak much because even though Cat knew that sometimes Elizabeth can't sleep, but then Elizabeth realized this maybe was the right moment to tell her friend how she felt. So after when Elizabeth said that there is something that she wants to tell Cat about, so Cat looked at her friend and listened. After that, she said that Elizabeth had a crush on Cat. It was silent. The entire mess hall was silent. Either of them didn't speak. For the first time, they had no idea what to say. Except that Cat broke the silence and asked if she meant the truth all about this. And even though Elizabeth did meant the truth, but she said yes, it was the truth. But before Cat could even answer back, Elizabeth Elizabeth left the mess hall and went back to her room, running away. She believed that Cat was going to say that she doesn't like her the same way. She wasn't even giving Cat a chance to be telling her herself, just running away before she can even get the chance to be talking. So the next day, when the others were training in some sparring match, Elizabeth and Cat were doing the sparring match themselves. Normally, they do some talking while fighting, but this time it was completely silent. And not only that, it felt a lot of awkward feeling that just because of the last night when Elizabeth revealed her true feelings for Cat. And Cat, though, she had no idea what to say except after this part, the training was over. Cat asked Elizabeth if she could talk, even though Elizabeth just wanted to go away, but she agreed. Elizabeth was told from by Cat that she in fact had feelings for her as well. It took her almost an entire night to realize it, and she was willing to be wanted to date Cat Elizabeth about this. But despite that, there's one problem. Since they were not, if they were to compete on dates, they wouldn't even know how the team react, or didn't know if their relationship was even gonna work because the constant fight was the enemy could have been as a big much could resulting big breakup between them because they didn't know if this enemy's constant fighting will deter their partner from their dating. But Elizabeth said that she was giving a try to see if it could work. So Kat agreed. And even the same day, they even told their friends, the rest of the team members, they were dating. They were all a bit shocked about it. But they were supportive because at least both of them were seemed to be happy. And the very first day afterwards, they were going on their first date. But all the plans had to be rescheduled because the alien enemy of Tropian Empire attacked once again. Despite having all these constant fights, the battles with the enemy, they managed to keep their relationship strong and stable. Stable and all. They were even able to get on dates, sometimes maybe to the movies, or just having some romantic dates at the base. Maybe having some manage to get some food from the mess hall, having and watch a movie in either Cat's or in Elizabeth's room, having a date. Maybe have some movie night, something like that. And it worked. Even this dating sparked strong hope among the rest of the team. As long as they were able to see that they could maintain their relationship, despite all this constant fighting, they will maybe spark another strength of morale and hope among the team and also for us to hope for the world. And after nearly another 2 more years of being fighting, of the year 2027, Tropian Empire was defeated. They had been driven away from Earth among the united forces of these Power Rangers. They saw Earth was no longer available or interested in that, even though that they lost interest in the planet. Because they realized there was no point of being trying to take over planets when there was a strong resistance. So they decided to leave Earth interest entirely. After this though, they didn't even stop them at all, because even despite the enemy was now gone, the team of the Power Rangers always maintained focus and high alert if any problems would have happened. For another 2 years have passed, and that would be 2029 when Elizabeth took with Kat to the park in the city and proposed to her. She said yes immediately. They decided to have a wedding at the base, even among us, even despite that. They were actually very happy to being able to defeated their enemy once and for all, and now being able to take the next step in their relationship. What else could they wish for? And that was something that both of them really wanted to happen. And even after they got married, they actually went to just outside of town for a couple of days on some sort of honeymoon. Despite they were want to be on different a long term honeymoon, but since they never know how if there were any other potential threat against the people and the planet, so they went for a couple of days for their honeymoon, and it was just a great time though. Both relaxing, swimming with the lake, and just having a great time. And even after they have been married for another 3 years, they actually couldn't have decided to be they want to have a family. So they actually decided to adopt two daughters from a local orphanage was in town. And it was perfect for that. Because this also maintained the morale among the people, seeing two local heroes adopting an orphan child to maintain the morale not only for them but for the people. And for the cat, she had never expected that after all this, she could even realize and even understand at first that Elizabeth had a crush on her. But even from that, Kat's relationship with Elizabeth was something that she never regretted. And Elizabeth, after the very first time on their first date, she didn't regret a single day that she admitted her true feelings for Kat. And especially now, having her as a wife and having two daughters with her, this was the perfect dream for both of them. Not only without having a family together, but also being found someone they really, really care about. Even for most of all this, Kat, in her mind, Elizabeth was the perfect partner for her to be with, and especially as a special wife. And Elizabeth, she couldn't have asked for a much better partner as Kat. Because even despite that Kat was about almost close to 160 years old after they had adopted their two daughters, she didn't mind that. Even despite she's nearly 200 years old from that point, but she didn't mind because her love for Kat goes beyond anything. And this is how Elizabeth, Delgado, and Kat Manx find a true love and got a family together. The end.